Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower for Author Magazine, and today I'm at the Pacific Northwest Writers Conference with the one and only R.L. Stine. R.L., welcome to Author.
Well, thank you, Bill. Nice to be here.
You were keynote speaker for the 2018 Pacific Northwest Writers Conference, and you gave a lovely speech last night. And you told a nice story about sort of how it began for you, which you described finding a typewriter. Yeah, did you find it? Now I'm trying to remember the story. You were 9 years old, yeah?
I was 9 years old, and I found this typewriter and dragged it into it was in the attic.
Manual, I assume.
Yeah, an old Remington.
Yeah.
Big black, typewriter. And dragged it into my room and started typing little joke magazines and little funny books and funny stuff and typing stories. Not like that though, like this.
Yeah.
Typing like this. But why? I have no idea.
You can't.
Why?
You can't remember. You weren't someone who had, like, prior to that, who would grab himself a pen and start drawing pictures.
No, well, everyone in my class, I was in 4th grade, and they were drawing little comic books.
Yeah.
They would take paper and staple it, and then they were drawing comic books. And I would show mine around, and everyone would say, "You're terrible, you're awful, you can't draw."
Right.
And I looked around, and actually my goal, at that age of 9, I was a comic book freak. I loved comic books, and I wanted to be a comic book illustrator.
Right.
That's really what I
that was the dream, right?
And I couldn't draw. I see everyone else could draw better than me. So that's one reason. Then I was saying, well, okay, I'm going to write, and I'm in my room typing all the time. I don't know. I was a very fearful kid, and very shy, and afraid of all kinds of things. So I think staying in my room and creating my own worlds and just being alone there, doing my thing was, I think that's one of the reasons probably that I was so fearful. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, a very wealthy suburb of Columbus called Bexley, Ohio. And so there were like mansions in the next block. And we were in this tiny, right by the railroad, literally
on the other side.
3 houses from the railroad tracks, in this little white brick house, tiny house. And the governor's mansion of Ohio was 2 blocks away.
But you were but you were poor at that time.
And we were incredibly poor.
Were you aware of that?
And all these,
you
there
knew.
are many ways that you're aware of it, that you're not like the other kids in the neighborhood. And I think being an outsider and feeling like an outsider, it makes you become an observer. You're on the outside watching others. And I think that's contributed to my wanting to write at that age. People always say, well, was there a special teacher who really supported you and helped you? And I have to say, no, there wasn't. Because, I would type these little funny magazines.
Right.
And they were little joke magazines. And then I'd bring them into school and pass them around to everyone. And the teachers would say, Bob, please stop.
Really?
Please stop.
Really?
Yeah, you're disrupting the class. Bob, please stop bringing these things to school. And that's not encouraging. It's not encouraging.
No.
And but I always thought if they hadn't told me to stop, I might have stopped.
Humor was really your first love.
That's all I cared about.
Right, and that was your way in.
My wife and I both worked at Scholastic. We were both editors, and this is in the 70s, mid-70s. She was editor of a magazine called Dynamite. Well, Jane did 109 issues of Dynamite.
Oh my God.
It practically supported Scholastic, and kids loved it.
Yeah.
And it sold maybe 1.5 million copies a month.
Wow.
It was a tremendous cash cow for Scholastic. And her magazine was so successful that they let me do one. And I didn't, just because she was doing great. So they let me. I did a magazine called Bananas, and I did it for 10 years. I was Jovial Bob Stine, And I did this humor magazine. I wrote it practically all myself. I had, staff, and I did it for 10 years.
Did you like it?
What?
Did you enjoy it?
That was my life's dream.
You thought this is it.
I'd achieved my life's dream.
Wow.
And then after 10 years, the magazine wasn't selling. They folded it. They fired me. I went home. And I had done what I came to New York to do.
Right, I'm done.
And I thought, I'll coast. Now I'll coast the rest of my life. I had no idea what was in store for me.
Right.
No, the story with Goosebumps is, writing these joke books. I wrote joke books and stuff, and I had lunch with the editorial director of Scholastic one day. It was a friend of mine, a woman named Jean Fywell, and she said she needed someone to write a scary novel for teenagers. She just had a fight with someone else who did it. She said, "You could do it. Go home and write a scary novel for teenagers called Blind Date." And I said, sure, no problem.
So all you knew was the title?
Yeah, she gave me a title.
Right.
And I went home and it took I went to the bookstore and find out what she was talking about.
Right.
All these people who were writing teen horror, try to figure out what I could do that would be a little different. Wrote Blind Date. It was a #1 bestseller.
What did you think when it was the number
so
one?
Wait a minute, I'd never been close to that list. I don't know, I didn't understand it. I went to schools and I'd say to kids, "Why do you like this?" Why? And every time they say, "We like to be scared." Every single time.
That was the answer.
And then I wrote a second one called Twisted, a year later. And that was a #1 bestseller. I thought, wait a minute here, I've struck. Somebody once asked Agatha Christie, "Why do you think your books are so popular?" And she said, "I just stumbled onto something people want to read." Right. And that's what happened to me.
That's what happened to you.
I'm not confident about anything else. I'm not competent in anything. Ask my wife. I'm not. But writing, I always feel confident about. I never doubt that I can do something when writing. And so we did Fear Street, and it was doing really well. Yeah. We started doing for Simon & Schuster. Yeah. And the series was just great seller. And so then Jane, my wife, and her partner, Joan, said, well, we should try it for younger kids. No one has ever done a younger series for 7 to 12-year-olds. Right. No one's ever done a scary series for them. Yeah. And I said, no, I don't want to. Kind of business, right? So I'm not a great businessman, right. Great businessman. I said, no, it'll screw up Fear Street. Right. It'll screw up the audience for Fear Street. I don't want to do it. And they kept after me, and they kept after me. And finally I said, oh, all right. If I think of a good name for the series, we can try 2 or 3. That's how Goosebumps came out.
This might be too much of a reach, but when we were talking about the beginning of your writing life, back when you were a kid, back in Ohio, you said you were a very frightened kid at that time. And you're now scaring kids about that age. I don't want to put you on the couch, but do you think there's any connection there at all?
I don't know about that. I do think, it was a terrible way to be a kid.
It was a tough way to be a kid.
It was a tough way to be a kid.
Yeah.
But then when I started writing these books, I could remember what it felt like.
You remember what it felt like to be that age and afraid?
Yeah. You remember that feeling of panic. Yeah. And I could bring that feeling to the book. So I think it helped me write later on.
I think that's very helpful because, of course, the kids in the stories are always scared at some point. And you want to be able to connect to what that is to be that age and afraid as opposed to this age and afraid. It's different.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so, is there a hard part of writing for R.L. Stine? Is there a part that he wishes?
Now, you see, it gets harder, it doesn't get easier.
Oh, is that right?
Well, I've written about 130 Goosebumps books. And coming up, every chapter has to end on a cliffhanger.
Oh, God.
And coming up with cliffhangers that I haven't done 100 times, that's a real challenge now. Yeah. And also coming up with stories that I haven't done, it's more of a challenge. It's just harder to come up with ideas because I've done everything.
Yeah, do you ever start writing one and realize, I did that one already?
Oh, no. Well, I have editors. That's why I have editors.
They remind
say, Bob, you already did that. Bob, you already used that title. Bob, you used that in number 18. Bob,
wow.
they catch me.
Does the kid from Ohio ever look up and say, the
Yeah,
kid
always.
was living 2 houses from the governor across, just think, wow, whoa, look at me.
Always. It's an amazing thing.
It is.
It's just luck.
Yeah.
No, it's luck.
Okay.
It's all luck.
You think it's all
It's
luck?
an amazing, I do. It's an amazing lucky thing. Hey, when Goosebumps came out, this was before computers and things in bookstores, it sat on the shelves for months. No one noticed it. The thing just came out, and it just sat there. And then after maybe 4 or 5 months, kids started to notice it. But if it was out today with computers and everything, the stores would have pulled it.
Right.
And that would have been the end of it.
Right.
But it was sitting there, and then suddenly kids, I don't know, discovered it. There was no advertising and no hype, no anything. And it was just kids telling kids about it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all, just word of mouth. This secret kids network of kids going to school and saying, oh, this book is great. But that's total luck. Amazing lucky thing.
It's good to be lucky.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. Very nice. It worked out.